this is Ree here. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate all of you. Om Klim Kali Ke Namaha. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing. It really helps me a lot. Don't forget to check out my website, paradoxastrology.com. Book your consultation today. I can help you with anything. And if you'd like more exclusive occult videos that I don't post on YouTube, consider subscribing to my Patreon. It also helps to support this channel. The ego is very complex. When I talk about the ego and you ask somebody about ego, they're going to automatically think that you're talking about someone who's arrogant, someone who thinks that they're better than everyone. They're kind of going to equate it to a narcissist. So most people do not think that they operate an ego at all. Now, as you do spiritual work consistently over a long period of time, you start to understand how complex this ego really is. The ego is like an onion, and it has so many layers to it. You'll peel off a lot, and then you'll think, okay, I think I understand it now. And then boom, it will hit you. Another component of the ego that you've been carrying around your entire life. It puts us in so much delusion that we cannot see the truth. Ego puts you in this other reality where you're living in the same space as everyone, but you're in a different level of consciousness. And it's like you're asleep, but you don't know you're asleep. Say, for example, you could have just meditated, you're on a very high conscious vibe, you're feeling really good, and then say you're driving, and someone comes very close to hitting you. You get in fear, and then because of that fear, you start getting angry. You get angry at that person. Then you go about your day and you're still in fear a little bit, and you're still angry, and then 3 days later, you're still thinking about that. Now, it's been 3 days, that can turn into a week, and you've actually been operating on ego for a whole week, and you didn't know it. Solely on ego, because of your unconscious fears. Nothing happened. It came close, but you're still dwelling on it. It's the ego. It's the ego mind is repeating these things in your head. Or you can go about your day and you're still thinking about what you did in high school, or that memory pops up. You should have, could have, would have, did this one thing in this particular scenario years ago. Ego. You're missing your ex because you thought it was perfect, and you can't believe they're with this other person because you just looked online and you see that they're with somebody else. How dare they? Ego. This is all ego, but it gets very complex too. Every day, maybe you get up and you eat this one thing that you know is not good for you, but it's something that you love, or it's something that you like to have for snack. It's ego. It's something you're reaching for to make yourself feel better in this physical environment that isn't beneficial to you. It's the ego. So there's many different ways that this can play out, and that we're all living in this delusion. Just like you could be sitting there and saying, I need to get this job. This job is perfect for me, or I would be perfect for it. I need to get this job. And you start obsessing about it. Yeah, I will get this job. And then you watch something about the law of attraction that tells you that you can manifest anything. So you start obsessively thinking about this thing because you want to manifest it. Ego. You just attach yourself to your false identity. It's very complex. Very, very complex. We will always slip up until we awaken ourselves. And that's the layers of it. Even when you do a huge amount of spiritual practice, it still comes up. But as it's dissolving, what happens can be very scary, which puts people back into ego, is when the ego starts to dissolve. And people have this false sense of it dissolving as well, because the ego will hijack this spiritual practice that you're doing and make you believe that you're awake because maybe you acquired what we call siddhi, what they call supernatural powers, but it's not supernatural. It's actually innate to humans, like say clairvoyance or clairaudience. And you'll use that to try to prove to others that you are awakened, which is ego again. You see a lot of spiritual teachers doing that in the mainstream, who want to tell you, hey, follow me because I am clairaudient, I'm clairvoyant. Follow me because I have the answers. That's not enlightenment. In yoga practice and in tantric practice and Hinduism, they all teach us that we don't attach to those things because the ego will attach to that. The ego will make you feel that you're superior to others, which happens a lot of times to very advanced spiritual beings. You can have a spiritual awakening and the ego can hijack it. it can make you believe all of a sudden that because you have some kind of spiritual power that you acquired through these meditations, that now all of a sudden you're better than everybody. Same thing happens when people stop eating meat, which is the right decision, but they start thinking they're better than everybody else because they don't eat meat. And now their whole personality is being vegan or being vegetarian, and they even write it in their bio. Now the ego has attached to that as its identity, when you were supposed to use that to help heighten your consciousness and your level of consciousness, but now it's hijacked it. Now you're deeper in ego. Or a yogi could end up becoming a very high-ranking siddha, for example, or some kind of spiritual leader or a monk, for example, who has this high title, and they use that title to identify themselves. The ego uses it as an identity, and then they fall back down because now they think they're superior because of this. So there's many ways that the ego hijacks us. So when the ego starts to die, you will know it. There's going to be a lot of crying. There's going to be feeling that you're very upset. There's this feeling innately within you, even though nothing is physically happening to you, okay? But you feel as if you're dying inside. You feel that you are no longer the person you used to be, and your ego is afraid because it's your ego dying. You're not literally dying, but your ego is dying and it knows it. When you do a lot of spiritual practice, this will happen. And this doesn't just happen out of nowhere, which a lot of people fool themselves into thinking that. Not in Kali Yuga. Yes, there are people who all of a sudden have a huge awakening, but that is absolutely very, very rare. Very, very rare. Even people who have these mass awakenings, who are siddhas, who are yogis, they still do the spiritual practice every single day, hours and hours a day, to get rid of the ego. So that's how powerful the ego is. A lot of people, they'll have a certain awakening and then they think that, oh, my ego's gone. No, your ego hijacked it, and we can see it right away. But once it starts dying, it innately feels inside your body that you're dying. I know for me that it's popped up so many times that I just start crying out of nowhere that my life is over. That's the ego being afraid. It's trying to hang on to its last little bit, because as you do the spiritual practice, it's dissolving, and it knows that. It starts understanding that, okay, I don't have anything to attach to. Because as you're doing the spiritual work, there's other things you should be doing. Watching your speech. Your speech should change to be sattvic, which means that you're not swearing. You're not cussing at people. You're not in anger anymore. You're watching your words. You're watching what you say. What comes out your mouth has to be very clean. How you treat people has to be very clean. These are parts of getting rid of the ego. Fasting is very, very important, because once you start fasting, you'll realize that everything that you were eating was based in ego. It was based in emotions. So now the ego doesn't have something to latch onto. It can't tell you and try to latch onto you and say, oh, let's just have these chips, or let's just have this chocolate. That doesn't work anymore because you don't listen to it. So it feels like it's dissolving in that aspect. Other ways too, you're going to change completely. What you do will change. You won't be the same person that you were in ego. Your profession, your friends, everything around you will change. So then the ego will feel that I don't know who I am anymore. And you're going to go through that. You're going to go through that dark night where it's like, who am I? I know who I'm not, but I don't know who I am now. There's going to be a lot of crying. It's trying to get anything it can from you. So it needs your reaction to stay alive. So that's why it will get you to cry and feel these things. And then you'll start to understand that you're beyond this one life. And you'll start making decisions that are good for you for this life and all the other lives after it, instead of making ego decisions based in the present moment to make yourself feel better. So the ego won't have anything to attach to that either. And it's a very, very painful process. So that's why those who say that they just awakened one day and now everything's beautiful, that is a false awakening, because you're going to have this funeral for your ego. Your inauthentic self has to die first. It's going to be very scary because that never was you. It was like you're possessed your whole life by an entity that was never you, which is what Satan is. Satan is the ego. That's what a demon is. It's the lower aspects of you that have taken over. So that's why all the symptoms of a demon possession are the same as the ego possessing you. And yes, it's going to be difficult, but at the end, you're going to be an evolved person on your path for many, many lives. And when you do the work, it's going to be way easier for you in your next lives. So that's just a little bit about the ego. I thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the next one.